Good afternoon to David Plank. Thanks very much.
Okay, that says live on YouTube now.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome you all to this Cambridge South East Transport meeting tonight. This is the first of three meetings. I should say, by the way, that my name is Tony Orgy and I'm chairing this meeting. This is the first of three meetings about the Cambridge South East Transport project. Today and tomorrow will be meetings focused entirely on phase one of the project. That is interventions basically on or extremely adjacent to the A1307. This evening, we'll be considering all the projects between the Addenbrooke Roundabout and basically 4 Wentways. Tomorrow, we'll be looking at 4 Wentways to the Cambridgeshire border and Haverhill. And then on Monday, the 7th of June, there's a separate meeting which will focus entirely on phase 2. That is the offline, high quality public transport route. And in particular, the agenda papers going to the Greater Cambridge Partnership's joint assembly on the 10th of June. So tonight's agenda, basically, we're going to go almost geographically along the route. We're going to start with the Granham's Road junction. We'll then look at the Linton Greenway between the Addenbrooke Roundabout and the Babram Research Campus. And on that journey, we'll pass the Babram Road Park and Ride site and talk about the entrance there. We will then come back to the Haverhill Road Gog Farm Farm Shop Junction, and then we'll finally finish with 2 other schemes in this area of the 1307. I would just like to introduce 2 main speakers tonight. We've got Martin Meehan, who's the project manager for the Greater Cambridge Partnership for the whole phase 1 of the scheme, and Ollie Duffarm from the consultants Mott MacDonald, who will be taking us mostly through the presentation. And if we have any questions, and I'm sure there will be some, those are the 2 people who are going to answer them as well. We've also got Michaela Headland from Greater Cambridge Partnership on the admin side, and also Alistair, who is dealing with the computer side of things. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, I'd be very grateful if you would please raise an electronic hand so that I can see you. And I hope the meeting goes very well. I should say, if you've got any questions, what I've always done in the past is always to allow at least 1 supplementary question. So you don't have to ask if you want to ask a supplementary question, just carry on and we'll see how it goes. So with that, I think we can hand over to Ollie to start the meeting at the Granham's Road junction.
Great. Thanks very much, Tony. Good evening, everyone. So as Tony said, the purpose of this meeting is to provide an update as to the status for the schemes along the corridor, focusing particularly on the section west of the A11 up to Addenbrooke's roundabout from the last LLF session we held back in January 2021. So Granham's Road, starting at that location, you may have already seen the schemes currently on site and targeting completion during June 2021 with just some final surfacing and road marking and street lighting works expected between now and the completion of the works. That's pretty much the main update in relation to this scheme. So after each scheme, we just, as we've done before, we'll just pause for any questions or comments in relation to that scheme.
Yeah, I think Sam Davis, is it? Congratulations, Sam.
Thank you very much. Ollie, is that the literal extent of the tree planting and the hedge planting along there, or is that just a kind of illustrative number?
I think there's a bit more. There may be the odd one or two more. Is essentially we're replacing the on a like-for-like basis as to the highway trees that were there previously before the clearance works that were undertaken in advance last year. The hedgerow will be planted, so it's a continuous strip to tie in with the existing hedgerow either side as well. The planting works themselves will be seasonal dependent, so that may not happen in June, July time. We want to make sure that it's planted in at the best opportune time to make sure it grows sustainably and doesn't fail in the heat of what will hopefully be the summer.
Yeah, no, I get the seasonality thing. I'm just really, I guess, slightly surprised and disappointed that we're not doing more than going for a like-for-like replacement. That seems underwhelming, if I can put it that way.
It was essentially this was part of the discussion with CCC Highways in terms of finding the balance between maintenance and management of the trees. Elsewhere on other schemes where we've got more space and more open spaces, we have targeted a higher level. But here, where the priority was to improve visibility and functionality, whilst not taking away what we were trying to what was originally there previously, we focused on having the like-for-like replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I've got two more speakers, but before I bring them in, David Plank has asked if this presentation will be made available. It is already available on the Greater Cambridge Partnerships website, and I think was actually made available yesterday. So yes, it is available, and we can provide you with the access details, David. So we've got Rachel Northfield, and then I've got Linda DeChenu. So Rachel, please.
Thank you, Tony. I understand there's some works to be undertaken by the County Council with regards to some gas main, or actually might not be the council. And I'm just not quite sure about the coordination of you finishing your works and them starting theirs. And I wondered if there was any information about that at all. We've only just been made aware of them in this last couple of days.
Martin,
sure. No, I'm just going to pop in, Ollie. The Cadent works are currently scheduled to start on June 7th, and as our original program was to progress into June, although we might do a bit better than that. There was an overlap between the two projects. Our overlap would have been predominantly the nighttime carriageway surfacing replacement that we will be doing at Granham's and along the 1307 itself. So that's the interface between the two projects as it currently stands. Cadent to start on June 7th.
So there will be some overlap.
Yeah, but the overlap, we're supposed to explain maybe more clearly when we will be nighttime with the surfacing, because that's the only way we can really do it, the surface on the main 1307 itself. So we will be looking to do some nighttime surfacing next week. Okay. So we in truth, the way we're going at the moment on the scheme has gone reasonably well in terms of program, thankfully. We should actually be completely clear before Cadent actually start. Although when we started the collaboration with them and understood they were coming behind us, we did try and overlap as best we could, and that was the timing of the overlap as I've described. Okay,
I'm just obviously concerned about access as on an emergency route to make sure that we've still got opportunities there. Yeah, but if you've got coordination in place, that sounds really positive.
Yeah, no, we were aware of it. We were speaking to them. The real reason we didn't coordinate more was that they're looking for a slightly different road space or arrangement, as I would call it, a road usage arrangement, in that they're looking for a 24/7 traffic arrangements. We were content and able to do our work with sort of off-peak traffic lights, as you'll have probably seen.
Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So Linda, please.
Apologies, I'm just unmuted the wrong person.
Sorry, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, thanks.
Yes, I want to bring up the speed restrictions for that area. I think at the moment there's a 30-mile-per-hour speed sign as you approach the junction with Granham Road on Babraham Road. What I want to know is if you're considering, and if you're not considering, why not a 20-mile-per-hour speed restriction as the traffic approaches the roundabout between Granham Road and Babraham Road, and shortly after that, within about 30 yards or 40 yards, a pedestrian crossing, a bit further down the junction, a little bit further down the traffic lights in another junction, and a little bit further down another pedestrian crossing, and then Addenbrooke's roundabout. The 30-mile-per-hour sign was put up when the Residents Association in Babraham Road were discussing the park and ride some years ago with the involved local authorities. And at that point, we pointed out that the traffic was travelling far too fast along Babraham Road, because then it was a 40-mile-per-hour limit, and the 30-mile-per-hour limit was instead put in. That was in the late 90s. My suggestion now is that we really need a 20-mile-per-hour limit because of all these crossings and roundabouts. And also, I think there is, generally speaking, a movement to have a 20-mile-per-hour limit in urban areas, urban residential areas. And this is a residential area. So I just wondered what your thinking on that was, please. Thank you.
Who wants to take it, Martin or Oliver?
I'll take that one. So firstly, just in terms of the speed limit, the existing arrangement, the 30-mile-an-hour started right on the junction of the Granham's Road, and the purpose of this scheme was to improve the visibility and interface of that junction. We've adjusted the position of that start of the 30 miles an hour as part of our work. So the traffic should be hitting 30 miles an hour on before they get to the junction, as opposed to where it was previously signposted. So that there should be some improvements in relation to that. In terms of the reduction down to 20 miles an hour, it's not something that was specifically looked at as part of this project, or even part of the wider 1307 project. I think historically, I know there are a couple of roads in Cambridge themselves that have the 20 mile an hour speed limit on. I'm not sure in terms of how much compliance you get with that 20 miles an hour on the sort of main arterial roads coming in, which would be the main concern about getting police support in relation to that. So at the moment, obviously the traffic lights themselves, the ones you referred to just to the north of Granham's Road, which are just shown in this location here, they themselves obviously assist in slowing the traffic speeds down on that section. So at present, the works is adjusting the 30 miles an hour, but not looking to do that 20 mile an hour reduction further.
Did you want to come back?
Oh, well, yes, thank you. I did propose a 20 mile per hour limit when we had a previous consultation. And what worries me is that one can make proposals in sort of attend consultations, but it's not sort of taken up at all.
I don't specifically remember that, but it's something we can sort of check back on in relation to the 20 mile an hour, certainly.
Okay, I don't have any other speakers at the minute on this item, so shall we move on? Well, in fact, move backwards to the Addenbrooke's roundabout.
So there's a hand from Neville.
Oh, sorry, Neville, yes. Neville?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Neville.
Yes, following on from Linda's comments a few minutes ago, the police did put a covert camera at our request on Babram Road, and we were going to have a meeting with them, this at the end of 2019, but it was cancelled because of the pandemic. But this did show the average speed over 24 hours for a period of 7 days. The average speed was 35 miles an hour. They wouldn't reveal to us what the fastest vehicle was going along the road, but it's believed to be about 85 miles an hour. And that meeting will be recommenced when the pandemic is over. And so that's business waiting. But could you explain exactly which way vehicles coming down Granham's Road wishing to turn right at Babram Road, will they just go to the right of that?
The island?
Yes.
No, so they will stay on the left-hand side. So you can just make out there's a triangle, which was the previous arrangement. That used to be the big triangle wedge of grass right
Yes.
in the middle, and you used to have to sort of peel off from two sides of that. This is a more typical arrangement for a stand and give way, where you keep the left-hand side of that island, and
Well,
then
you're
you
pointing
turn
to the
right.
right-hand side.
So on this side, there might be a delay. So where that on this side, so the vehicles, if you're travelling along Granham's Road, you travel alongside, stop at the giveaway line, and then turn right out.
Okay.
On that side.
That's
So
certainly much safer.
And this side is purely for the left turn traffic coming in off the 1307, and from right turners coming eastbound on the 1307 to turn right in.
Fine. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, shall we move back now to the Addenbrooke's Roundabout and then progress up to 1307?
Okay, so this is scheme 3. This is the most northerly section of the Linton Greenway, from Addenbrooke's roundabout to Babram Park and Ride. In terms of sort of key updates from when we last presented, last time we presented some potential adjustments to the existing Red Cross Lane pedestrian crossing, just located where my arrow is showing on the screen at the present, and we tabled some proposals which involved adjustments to the access for Hills Road. So following the feedback that we received at the last session, and some further engagement specifically around that, we're now no longer proposing amendments to that crossing location. So the crossing will remain in its current position. The existing access to Red Cross Lane and Nightingale Avenue to the Hills Road service road will remain as it currently is. As part of the scheme, we will be refurbishing the existing crossing, so it has new signal equipment, but it will remain in its current location. And that's essentially the main change in relation to this scheme. And in terms of the next steps of the scheme, it's envisaged that the scheme will be delivered in 2 key phases. First phase being the Addenbrooke's to Warts Causeway section, the most northerly section here, short section here, and then the second phase, Warts Causeway to the Babram Park and Ride site. Now, the key reason for that relates back to a comment earlier in relation to the Cadent road space and negotiation. in terms of making sure that the works are done in a timely manner, in terms of making sure that we're not clashing with wanting to work in the same space, and logically when there's pipe works and below ground surfaces works that need to happen, that gets done ahead of any final surfacing works, which is unfortunately the element that we've got to do as part of our scheme. So the section that's affecting is fundamentally the Warts Causeway to the Baberham Park and Ride site, which is why that section's being delivered later than the first section. But the first section we are looking to be in a position to start work on that later this year. And so the next few stages are pretty much the scheme designs as presented back in January. So essentially is a 3 metre wide shared footway cycleway along the northern side of the 1307. As I mentioned earlier, that the access at Nightingales and Red Cross Lanes remains as currently proposed, albeit some resurfacing works in the main entrance junction where the Greenway crosses that section. Warts Causeway signal improvement works and the improvements to that junction also remain part of this phase 1. So essentially we'd be looking to stop the phase 1 of the works at this location, subject to the final coordination with Cadent Gas in relation to road space. And then the route passes down, again widening to 3 metres along its length, where there's remains space for verge. The verge remains to give the separation between the vehicle carriageway and the pathways along there. Rather than waiting to the end, should we maybe pause with this? I can see there's a hand up, Tony.
Okay, yes, if Nancy would like to. And then Matt Danish afterwards. Nancy?
Yes. There's a little green, solid green line that shows the hedge on the service road that seems to stop well short of the end of the service road. Is that an intention, or is the hedge, is the hedge continuing all the way to the entrance to the service road?
That's the existing hedge, and we aren't doing any proposals to that hedge.
I didn't think you were.
No.
It's just if you come down to where there's a split in the grass, there's an end of a hedge there as well.
Yes, yeah, that's just the way it's been drawn as an additional section of hedge, but that hedge remains as it is in its current form, and we aren't doing any proposed works as part of that. So that's maintained.
I didn't think you were. I just was clarifying. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, Matt, and then I've got Linda.
Sorry, Tony, we had David Blake raised his hand first.
Oh, did he? Okay, David then.
Okay, could I just ask what the proposals are for the Hills Road service road? Are there going to be any changes there? I'm a bit unsure what the proposals are at the moment.
So the Hills Road service road, there's no proposed changes to the junction at the Nightingale Avenue, other than a resurfacing around here and the priority given to the cycleway crossing in conjunction with the standard treatment that we're giving to certain crossings along the length of the Greenway. The vehicle access, you still remain to be able to get access in and out through that junction as you currently do at present. Along the service road itself, there's no works. The sort of mustardy colour here was some additional planting that was requested following a previous consultation, which is proposed. So that's soft landscaping proposals rather than any hardscaping. And there was some additional Sheffield bike stands following some feedback around the number of bikes that park on this corner. Now, I have noticed in recent times that has diminished slightly from what used to be congregating around this junction, and the aim of putting the cycle stands there was to take them away from where they would interrupt the intervisibility between the priority cycle facility and vehicles using this junction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Matt.
Hey, thanks. Is this working?
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Ali, for the rundown. I guess just a few points to see if I can get any answers here. Could you first, did you go over why the crossing was left in its current location as one? Two, has there been any thought given to the pedestrian flow along here and the fact that it's shared use may be overwhelming with the number of, was it 3 meter wide shared use may be overwhelmed with the number of people walking and cycling, and we generally do not prefer, we don't prefer shared use in this situation. I realize it's a constrained corridor, but it would be nice to know that some thinking has gone into why this is shared use and whether that's going to be a problem. At the junction of Warts Causeway and also others, has there been detection equipment specified to detect people so you don't have to push buttons? And I think finally, at the driveways along Babraham Road, because this is shared use, I noticed that there might be a sightline issue with people emerging from driveways. Has that been looked at? Is there a sightline issue if people are riding towards the back of the pavement that they should be aware of, or we should be aware of?
Okay, right. Please prompt me if I forget. I think there was four key points there. So, starting with Red Cross Lane. So, we looked at a number of options around trying to improve the location of that relative to the Zire line coming across from Nightingale Avenue and Red Cross Lane, including possibly turning that into a signal junction, looking at where we could locate it to minimise the amount of deviation along there, all of which impacted on access at this location in terms of vehicles in and out at this point. One of the constraints along here was in terms of not being able to impact on that existing wildlife corridor, which does provide some screening to residents in this area, as well as providing the environmental benefits. Red Cross Lane, we were limited to what we could do on this south side in relation to keeping that open as an in and an out route facility. So all of that, coupled with the proximity of Addenbrooke's Roundabout signalised junction itself, Warts Causeway, and the traffic load on here, essentially the preferred option was the solution that we had, sort of just locating the crossing here and trying to bring the minimal diversion across, but that fundamentally altered the arrangements for accessing on the Hills Road surface road along this section, and there was a lot of strong opinion in relation to this scheme as an additional method to bring in, and as a result, that element of the scheme is now no longer being taken forward.
Okay.
In terms of the Warts Causeway, at present there aren't any detection loops specifically for cycles on the approach to that junction. We did have a discussion with CCC signals team around that as a general policy and approach for that, and at each of those locations we made sure that the pole locations are located so that those in recumbent and cargo bikes, etc., are able to access the button without being in the usual position of where you come to a crossing in the button's 500 millimeters away from the curb, and so you can't reach it without putting your wheel or anything else out into the live carriageway. So at present there's no detection loops proposed for that junction. In terms of the width of the cycle lane, the usage figures that we obtained for both walking and cycling suggested that for this section, the 3 meters was sufficient width for a shared use facility. And we did briefly look at along this length about providing a segregated option, but the minimum width for a segregated option was going to push the path wider, and we knew we already had problems along part of the length in achieving more than 3 meters. So we felt that the 3 meters as a shared facility was and a consistent approach along the route was a better solution to go with. I agree that obviously in an ideal situation you would have a segregated approach, but with the spatial requirements we had, the shared setup was preferred. And then final one, in terms of visibility, you can't see this on each of theirs, but as part of these works, so the highway boundary is set back a couple of meters generally in each of these locations. So there'll be works to improve the visibility, the intervisibility on this section. And one of the reasons why we haven't utilised that width up to the highway boundary in that location is we didn't want to push the cycleway closer to properties and therefore compound the intervisibility between cycles running through there, which is why we've taken the width out of the verge on the opposite side.
Did you want to come back, Matt?
Thanks for those answers. Not for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Linda DeChenu.
I'd like to ask a question. Whereabouts is the boundary between the house property and the highway property? So we live at number 11 Abraham Road.
This is our side.
It's just here.
Right.
So how, if I was to measure it from the road, how far back is the boundary?
The simple answer is I couldn't give you an exact figure based off the drawing I have in front of me now, but if you from memory the records, the boundary is set back more something along the line of that solid grey line in this location rather than this line here. So it's not at the back of the footpath, it's actually set back a bit further through there, albeit still in front of property boundary walls and features like that.
How can I find out precisely where the boundary is?
I can't recall whether it's shown on the CCC's asset data GIS service. It's certainly something that I'm sure would be available from a FOI request, I would have thought.
Okay, I've additional questions. Not quite clear who covers this, but where you've got the new pedestrian crossing just outside our house, the grass verge outside number 11 and number 13 is currently a mud bath, and there's a storm drain or something that sticks up well above the level of the grass verge, which means...
Sadly, I know exactly the cover you mean, I'm afraid. Yes, so if I can just jump in, I think if you can see on screen, I'll skip to the next slide because I think your property.
I have got other questions, sorry. Yeah.
So just in relation to the grass verge, obviously this grass verge is to be established, and we're widening some of that existing mud bath as you referred to, and the cover will be adjusted to suit the new level of the path in that area. So that will be done. The crossing works themselves weren't delivered by GCP; they were delivered by the local developer.
Yeah. When will that be done?
So this is part of the phase 2 of this section. So at the present, the proposals are to start that as soon as the road space frees up in relation to cadent activities. So in relation to the first slide I had, this would be under the second phase, so at some point during 2022.
Right. So okay, thank you. Now the other questions I have. They're quite diverse. One is about the pathway on the south side of Abraham Road opposite us. I'm a bit puzzled as to why the pathway that people can walk along doesn't go right up to where the new pedestrian crossing is. That it means that if you cross the road to the south side, there's no pathway to turn right on and walk down Abraham Road. Or if you're coming up Abraham Road on that side of the road, you can't walk straight up to the pedestrian crossing. And I just wondered why that pathway hadn't been extended to make that transition a bit easier.
I couldn't comment as to why it wasn't extended as part of the crossings, but I believe it did come up in January last year. And I think, Martin, chip in if I'm wrong, but I believe we did commit to providing that short section of path as a link up. So it was about 20 metres or so.
Yeah, that's correct, Ollie. We will be doing that as part of our works.
Yeah, did you say it did come up in January? Yes, go on.
Thank you, that's very helpful. The other thing is the cyclists have got right of way along the path, pedestrian cycle way in front of the house along on the north side. I'm slightly worried about it because it's very difficult to go out onto the road, and I can see that you're going to drive out when there's no cyclist, and then a cyclist is going to come along and you're going to be in their way. And I just wondered how that's going to be managed. And secondly, what are the rules for electric scooters? I've quite recently almost been knocked down by somebody coming along on an electric scooter very fast. Are they going to be allowed on it? Are they going to, you know, what's, and there are actually electric scooters left out for people to use at the junction with the new estate, the Nine Wells estate. My last question, which I'll just mention now, is the amount of rubbish. I don't know if this falls into your responsibility, but the amount of rubbish that there is on the pathway up to the park and ride. It's grown enormously. People just throw rubbish, you know, onto the path and into the hedge, and there's no dustbins at all for them to put it in all the way along. I'm not suggesting that we have bins outside people's houses, but perhaps where you have the hedged area along the farm or whatever, some places could be found for people to leave their rubbish, because there's quite a lot of people and cyclists go along that pathway.
Okay, so 3 quick questions.
So in relation to the cycleway and footway priority with drives, it is probably just worth noting that the proposal isn't actually too much different from what's currently there. That it is currently a shared, assigned as a shared use path, and currently, as you're coming out of a drive and looking to cross, as you would in any normal circumstance, pulling out of the drive to make sure that there's no pedestrian coming along, there's that sort of duty of care to make sure that the visibility and the road is clear, and part of that's that fundamentally isn't changing by these proposals. The path is wider, so that there's more space available to pedestrians and cycles, but fundamentally that arrangement doesn't change, and that's why we didn't want to push it closer to, because we wanted to make to properties, because we wanted to make sure that visibility remained. In terms of the rubbish bins, that's something that's probably needs to be raised with Cambridge County Council in terms of their refuse collection team. Obviously, they'll have a key set bin locations and arrangements for maintenance and picking them up and changing them. So at the moment, we're not getting rid of any bins that aren't on there. Is maybe something we can pick up, just or at least pass back that comment, Martin, to the CCC maintenance team.
Yeah, we'll do that, Ollie. Yeah, that's it's not put in our brief to put in the bins on this section.
Yeah, should be the city council.
Yeah, city council. Apologies.
Okay,
And the last was scooters, I think.
Yeah, the electric scooters.
Scooters. So I know this is an evolving subject, but I think at the moment they're not formally licensed to ride on footways. I say that I haven't kept up to date fully with all the recent emergency legislation that's being passed, but my understanding is that at present electric scooters shouldn't formally be on footways.
As far as I can see, there are no other questions on this. So shall we move along up to 1307?
Yeah. So
thank
continuing.
you.
Thank you. Neville's just raised his hand.
So we're moving closer to the entrance to the Babram Road Park and Ride site.
Sorry, Tony, Neville Silverstone raised a hand.
Oh, sorry, Neville.
Yes, following on from Linda's comments once again, if we look at what I call the west side of Babram Road, I do wish to support the joining up of the footpath on this side of the road, and perhaps you can explain exactly what is in mind to improve the quality and the width of the footpath from the Toucan crossing up to Wirt's Causeway. At the moment, it's only 1 meter wide. It's in very bad condition. And as Linda said, it doesn't connect with the Toucan crossing. There's about 30 feet of grass, which at the moment is mud at the end of the footpath. But it is the desire line for people crossing the Toucan crossing and then going to Addenbrooke's Hospital. There are droves of pedestrians and cyclists and also scooters make their way up this very poor footpath to Knightley Avenue, and then they go through Knightley Avenue and frequently access Red Cross Lane in order to access Addenbrooke's. It really is a very busy footpath, and if you can go slightly further north on your plan, I'm at the bottom half of the two drawings there. The bottom half of the plan. It says cyclists to have priority over existing private accesses. Is that a new path that's being made?
That's so this on that view there, that's the next section down, but that's the path that's on the north side or the east side, if you like, of the 1307. Apologies. So as you were travelling on Wirt's Causeway, if you were walking down, you continue on.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the lower half of that.
That's it.
Yeah.
So as you're walking down, you continue on that opposite side of Wirt's Causeway. So the existing path at the moment that you're referring to, that's 1 meter wide. At the moment, there's no proposals to widen that as part of these works.
I mean, why does it say cyclists to have priority over existing private accesses?
So that's the cycleway on the east side of the 1307. So on this side, you've got the
well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that going to be upgraded?
So that's an existing path that's 1.8, 1.9 meters wide, which is being widened to the 3 meters wide.
It's only 1 meter wide at the moment.
I think you're talking of cross purposes. One of you is talking about the northeastern side and the other is talking about the southwestern side of the road.
Well, I'm talking about the southwestern, the lower part of the slide at the moment.
Yeah, I think.
The note is only referring to the north, to the northeast path. So
Yes,
there's two viewports, which is possibly slightly confusing here. In terms of this lower half of the slide,
yes,
is the continuation of this point here. So if you can see two cut lines, if you were walking along this path here, following my arrow, at that point there, you join this path here and continue all the way down.
I'm not talking about that path. There are two.
So you're talking about the path on this side.
If I could just come in and clarify this, what I think Neville is talking about plan view 4, and Ollie is saying that refers to the northeastern side. It does not refer to the southwestern side of the road.
Well, you've got it, Tony. Thanks for clarifying, but I'd like an answer.
So
it's the lower part of this slide.
Yeah.
The two diagrams on one slide.
So we aren't proposing any works to the southwest path on the 1307 on this path, which is a 1 meter wide path, which is that line running along that section.
And you've no plans to join that path up with the Toucan crossing?
So that was that connection there, which we will be doing, which Linda also mentioned as well. So we will provide that link from the crossing up to that existing path.
I mean, it's a heavily used path, since the Toucan crossing. There are a lot of people make their way over the Toucan crossing, over the mud, onto this path, and then down Knightley Avenue. And it's in a very, very bad condition. I can't understand why it can't be widened and improved. I'd like you.
Well, I think you've made your point, Neville.
Yeah, Neville, currently, sorry, it's Martin here. Neville, currently this, the area you're referring to, unfortunately, didn't, it isn't part of the scope of works that we're doing. We were focusing on what's called the Linton Greenway, which is the pathway that we're widening. So there is no brief to do anything of that footway. However, in January, when this was raised, we said we would, as requested, join up to avoid the muddy section close to the Toucan crossing, and we will continue to do that. At the moment, there is no plan to widen the footway because it's not within the scope or brief of this particular project. But obviously, you've made your point well, and I will bring it up and raise it with the appropriate people. But it's just not part of this scheme at the moment, I'm afraid.
It's very disappointing.
Okay, thanks very much. John Burns. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks for your message, John. Yes. Over back to Ollie again.
Sorry, it's Alistair here. I've got Rachel Northfield and Sam Davies have hands raised.
Right, I've lost my screen, which shows me with the hands raised. So very sorry about that. So Rachel next.
Thank you, Tony. I've just got 2 comments and a question, if that's okay. First of all, about the crossing and the muddy path area. We've actually had it and been reported to the campus that it's actually been really badly flooded in the heavy rain that we've had during May. So we would urge any works that could come forwards to support that in a more timely fashion to be done, if that was at all possible, because there have been some quite serious concerns raised about the amount of water that was left after the heavy rainfall. The second thing that I wanted to say was I was really pleased to hear about the Warts Causeway traffic lights and the call buttons, etc., that are being put in. I've seen a really powerful video, which if I can find, I'll send to you to share, which is all about people who are disabled in wheelchairs trying to reach the buttons to call the pedestrian crossings to work for them, particularly if they are set too far back or too high up, which often happens in the setting of them. But I'm sure that you'll have that in hand, so it's not a problem. Just to explain, it is a problem at the Adam Brooks Roundabout. So if you wanted to have a look at how not to do it, that is absolutely where not to do it. But my actual question that I wanted to raise, rather than the comments, was obviously we're talking about the heavy footfall on those paths at the moment, and you'll probably be getting to it perhaps even later in the meeting. But I'm really interested in what plans are going to be in place whilst the works are underway to support access for pedestrians and cycles along the whole of that route from the park and ride down to the roundabout. Thanks.
Okay, just to pick up on the flooding, presumably that you're referring to that section of the link up between the crossing and that existing path rather than the new path itself.
Yeah, it was all in that vicinity, Ollie, when we've had those very heavy rainfalls during this month.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we can just take a look at that and try and make that
would be really appreciated.
Yeah,
thank you.
to sort of alleviate that in sort of out of sequence if we can. I'll take a look at that in the week. No problem, and I'll feed back to you.
Thank you, Martin.
Pleasure. Yeah.
In relation to the traffic management, or I should say the pedestrian and cycle management, really is the key one in relation to the delivery of this scheme. Martin, I think you may want to chip in, but the strategy of this was to do it in short sections under traffic lights whilst maintaining pedestrian and cycle flow, so you've got some additional space within the carriageway to be able to adjust and divert pedestrians around through in a safe area whilst the works sections are being done out in sections. Martin, I know you've been having sort of more detailed discussions with contract on this, but
it's always difficult to try and coordinate these things as you've identified, Rachel. So one of the benefits, and we looked at this, we walked this over a week ago now, Ollie, didn't we? And what we're trying to do is, where possible, maintain the footway integral as it is. And because it's been widened, obviously we've got to work on it during the day, and at that point we would have to divert people away from the working area onto the carriageway under the temporary light situation. We're likely to only be allowed, the off-peak lights, and so at that point we would have to make arrangements to divert people safely into the carriageway and take them back in outside our working area. But outside of that, because we're widening and want to keep the footway integral as it is, i.e., don't touch it, just build up on it really, rather than dig it up in any way where we can do that, then we would be able to return the footway for people's use outside of the construction period, if I've explained myself and if you can understand what I'm saying.
Thank you. I know I understand exactly what you're saying. That sounds a really good solution. And so long as we can keep that route open whilst you're working and it's a safe, protected environment, that sounds really satisfactory. And thank you for thinking that through already.
No problem. And there are other solutions as we get onto different sections of the road, when we say the Tucon crossing, which we're currently looking at, and we may be able to do something to bring people away from the widened footway and not onto the total length and the narrowed footway we talked about. But there's always things we can look at, and we have to look at those to manage the cyclists and pedestrians properly, because it is a busy area. And it is an inconvenience, we understand, while we're widening, that people have to do this, but that's probably the only way we can do it, unless we transport them up by bus somewhere, I think.
Thank you. We see the greater benefit, so thank you for that.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
So, Sam, please.
Hi, very quickly, because I know you need to move on.
Yeah.
The point that Linda made about this raised manhole cover outside 13 Babraham Road, I had an email from the residents there today asking if there's anything that can be done about it, because at the moment it's a hazard. They are having to reverse out onto the cycleway, and I appreciate it's not a problem of your making, and I understand why you say you won't tackle it until you're working on that section of road till 2022, but it seems to me to be extremely hazardous from the photos they've sent me. So if there's any way of expediting a solution there, that would be great. And the second thing is to follow up on Matt's point about capacity on this route. Ollie, I think you said you'd done some counts, but obviously the campus will have grown since those counts were taken and will continue to grow. And I guess I'm concerned about how future-proof this arrangement is going to be. 3 meters wide does not sound generous, and I would just like to understand kind of what modeling has been done to see how well this is going to perform in the future.
So yeah, the counts were done. I guess one point today is prior to the new Toucan crossing, which does provide a link into the campus through another way. So in terms of sort of flows on that section, that helps to alleviate it on that side. And in terms of the peak demand on here, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it was something like sort of had about 20% below the threshold of where you'd look to provide a wider shared footway. So at this stage, what we prioritised on, rather than having a 3.5 metre one that was right up against the carriageway, for example, on here, we prioritised keeping that 1 metre segregation between the carriageway and the cycleway through here in order to get 3 meters wide. Anything beyond that would have needed re-establishment of that hedge, which we know from previous discussions when we looked at the wider segregated facility wasn't going to be the acceptable to both landowners and also from an environmental perspective in terms of sort of basically taking out that hedge and re-establishing further back. So there is some capacity in the route at present, along with some measures in terms of the crossing here to help manage flows from that side of things.
Okay, and the point about the cover outside number 13.
Yeah.
I think perhaps we have a look at that, Martin, in relation
Yeah,
to
sure,
the footpath.
Yeah, no, sorry, Ollie, I'm trying to talk at the same time as you, which isn't productive. Yeah, Sam, I'll take a look at that with the team who are down at Granham's. I'm not sure whose cover it actually is, or whether there is any reason we can't say adjust it, because some utilities only allow certain contractors to do things to their assets. So if we can maybe do something to assist, we will, in the light of your comment.
And if you could get back to Sam with whatever you can do, that'd be very grateful.
Yeah, no problem. Certainly, pleasure.
Okay. I've got Barbara Kettle now, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sorry. As someone who, if I am going to Addenbrooke's, is likely to go to the park and ride and then walk up from there, having crossed over the road to the south side of the road, which side of that pathway is pedestrian and which is cycle? Because at the moment, the pedestrians are on the road side of the pathway and the cyclists are on the house side of the pathway. When you come to go into Addenbrooke's, you get knocked over by a cyclist because you have to cross as a pedestrian the cycle path. And I was quite seriously knocked down by a cyclist. It was his fault. He said it was his fault. But why do the pedestrians have to walk over the cycleway to get into Addenbrooke's?
I'm just trying to picture the path you're referring to. The main.
It's
path
right when you get to the it's the bus centre where the buses all congregate. when you get to that point along that path, you have to then go left into a pedestrian path to go up to Addenbrooks. And at that point, you are on the roadside and the cyclists are on the house side. And as a pedestrian, you have to walk across the cycleway. And you can't hear them coming. You know, I mean, why is it that way round? Wouldn't pedestrians be safer on the house side of the path so that the cyclists are then removed from those that are reversing out as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure why the specifics of that arrangement was set up, but in terms of the proposed path that we've got on that northeast side, there isn't a
No, it's the
designated
southwest side. It's the southwest side.
West side only, yeah.
Yeah, it's
on this existing side all the way down. So it's
Yes,
yeah.
you've crossed over from the northeast. You're on the southwest, and you're doing the last bit of the walk into Addenbrooks, into the bus station first, and then along the path and across into Addenbrooks.
so
You know,
that's
at
on
that point, all that bit there, the pedestrians are on the road side of the path, and the cyclists are on the house side of the path. I don't get why.
this is between the bus station and going into Addenbrooks.
No, leading up to the bus station.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That bit of the walk along.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just off screen, I think, from the roundabout here.
It is, yeah. Can something be done? Can it, you know, because to me, this is the most dangerous bit of the walk.
I think it's a bit outside the scope of this, but if Martin could take that up at Shire Hall,
yeah,
I think that's the best way forward.
Yeah, I'll raise it. Barbara,
Yeah, it's from when you cross over the road.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
I think I
From
know
that
it.
point on, they seem to be the reverse way round to how they should be.
Yeah, okay, no, I take your point, and I will raise it with the Cambridge County Council guys, and just and I'll get back to you and see what was said.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Right.
Yeah.
Back to Ollie, and I think we're approaching the Baben Road Park and Ride site.
Yes, so the next few slides essentially just highlighting the principle of the wide and 3 metre shared footway down south of Granham's Road, as it comes up to the Audi garage as well, and again the same principle of the path having the priority over the access roads through there, and up to the end of this section, which terminates at the existing Baben Park and Ride site. So the intention currently, as proposed, is to tie back in into that, so that the dominant flow round into the Baben Park and Ride site. Now, I know we've had a few comments previously in relation to that junction and how that operates, which are coming up on the next few slides. So if there's any comments in relation to the Baben Park and Ride junction, I'd maybe just ask to hold fire on those, because there's a slide in a few slides time outlining the proposals at that junction.
Okay, we should carry on, Ollie, and then we'll come back to the junction.
So at that point, that's the
questions?
end of Scheme 3, Section 1.
I'm not seeing any questions or requests to speak, so carry on.
Okay. So Baben Park and Road Park and Ride extension was a scheme presented separately from our last session, but since we last spoke, the planning application has been submitted, so should be appearing on the planning portal shortly. And for those who are unaware of the main proposals, the scheme is to provide additional parking facilities in the existing underdeveloped section of the Baben Road Park and Ride site, with access out onto the 1307. So just to get your bearings, north is now to the left of the page, and that road to the north of the car park extension is the existing bus access into the Baben Road Park and Ride, and this here is the end of the Linton Greenway as it comes around the corner. Again, some more details coming up around the junction proposals shortly. But just in relation to the application, so the planning application is live at present, and so should be available for comments or questions through the planning portal shortly. And in terms of the next steps of that, obviously we need to conclude the planning process in relation to that. In conjunction with, we'll be developing the detailed designs for the scheme, and subject to successful planning approval, expecting to start construction on the site during winter 2021, spring 2022.
So if anyone wants to comment, the planning application, as Ollie says, is on the portal, and the planning application will be considered in the normal way for any planning application. So Rachel?
Thank you, Tony. Just very quickly, will there be any loss of capacity whilst you do the building works, or will the current capacity at the park and ride be maintained?
So just off screen here, we expect a small section of the car park to be occupied from a contractor's welfare facilities and things like that. But the majority of the construction of this site, if you've been past the site recently, you'll notice that there's a construction access being formed here
Yes.
already. So fundamentally, the principle is that the operations are sort of self-consuming, if you like, with a small area here, so a minor one in relation to the overall park and ride site, but hopefully small enough to not make a significant impact.
Yeah, so when you know, it would be really helpful to know how many spaces will be lost as a result of that, with any sort of planning that the campus might need to do to try and persuade others to use maybe the Trumpington Park and Ride instead of Babram.
Yeah, noted.
Thank you.
Okay, David Blake's got his hand up. So David?
I'd just like to ask is, I noticed the work is started already, and you said, I think it's access for guys to sort of put their facilities in. Is this going ahead without planning permission then, on the basis it is going to happen?
No, not at all. What you'll have seen on site is some welfare cabins that are actually set up there as part of the current Granham's Road works and welfare facilities on that. And the intention is that it's maybe a bit more substantial in terms of a site setup than you might otherwise expect, because we're anticipating being able to use this as a base for some of the other Warts Causeway and the Linton Greenway works as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not related to the extension.
So the hedge, the green hedge that's been removed, that'll be replaced, will it?
That will be reinstated back in that section there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And it's in the same location, or the indicative location, as shown in the planning application.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I've got no further speakers. So if you want to carry on, Ollie.
Just sorry, Tony. James Littlewood posted a question in the chat asking about which planning portal. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Miguel has just responded. Apologies.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a planning application that actually goes to the county council as opposed to
council,
the
yeah.
district or city council. Yep. Okay. On you go.
Great. So just moving on to the next section of the Linton Greenway, which is between the Park and Ride junction to the Babram Research Campus. So on screen now is just the overview of the route, with the Babram Road Park and Ride junction to the far left, crossing Hinton Way roundabout, going along Babram Road, past Wandlebury, and continuing through to the Babram Research Campus roundabout. And the principle along this route was to make some minor safety improvements in relation to where there are areas where you could improve the segregation away from the 1307. To do that, as well as some improved wayfinding, guidance and safety measures in relation to the cycle area. At this point, it's probably worth just noting that a couple of things aren't formally covered by this section in relation to the Haverhill Road junction and the Gog and Gog Farm Shop, and that section past Wandlebury, as that's being covered under a separate scheme due to the scale of the works proposed in that area. So we'll cover that separately. So outside of it, the principle of this was to make sure we had an improved corridor along this section with some safety interventions where appropriate. And the key parts to this update today is picking up on some key points that came out from the previous consultation on this section in relation to the Babraham Road Park and Ride junction, the Hinton Way crossing, and also an existing pinch point where segregation is a particular challenge in relation to the existing highway boundary and facilities on the approach to the Babraham Research Campus in here. So, firstly, looking at the Babraham Road Park and Ride junction. So, we're currently developed outline proposals for modifications to this signal junction. Essentially, the key aim is to bring that the proposed crossing far more on the desire line to avoid the existing 90-degree bend round to the crossing that's a lot set back further into the existing bus access road to the park and ride site, and also give opportunity to tidy up the interface between the Linton Greenway that we just looked at coming down from Addenbrooks, round the interface going round to the cycle parking and the main footway into the park and ride site, as well as the future access for the main park and ride expansion I just mentioned earlier. So these are outline proposals, and we're in the process of sort of discussing these with the associated signal team and safety teams at CCC. But this is a new element that hasn't been presented before. So I'm happy to pause and take any questions at this point in time.
And the key point, as you say, about this was the comments that we've had in the past were basically about trying to get the line of the path as much along the desire line as possible. That's which correct. Is what you've tried to achieve and shown here. I've got Matt Danish, and then I'll come to Linda Worth. So Matt.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, it is a map. I mean, this would be a very big improvement, I wanted to say, over what's currently there, which is almost unusable. And I see the notes for the additional pole for equestrian and, well, he says trailer bike, but I assume you mean larger bike.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Linda will cover any additional issues relating to equestrian use when you get a chance to talk to her, unless she's on this call, I'm not sure. And the only other thing I guess I would have raised here is that detection, again, would be another great boon. And I think, I'm not sure why it should be an issue, but I'll just put it out there. Yeah, I think that's it for me now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Do you want to respond, Ollie?
In relation to the detection, yes. We have got to be a bit careful in relation to the impact on making sure there's bus priorities at this point, and referencing back to the conversations we had with CCC as a signals operator and maintainer here, as a default, they're not looking to introduce specific loop detection for cycles, particularly where we can introduce additional equipment that helps mitigate the risk of the contact points and wheels and etc. sticking out into the carriageway.
Okay, well, Linda Worth, please.
Hi there. Yeah, Ollie, can you just clarify this? This is new, isn't it? I haven't seen this before. I was expecting the equestrian access to go across the new development.
This is new. So this is at the park and ride sites for the buses coming in. So this is fairly recent.
Can I be confident that this path's actually going to take us somewhere further down the line?
At the moment, hopefully yes. The path, the Linton Greenway at present. Obviously, that will connect up to the path on the continuing past to future schemes down at Hayville Road and Gog Magog Farm Shop. So
That's very interesting. Thank you. I'm waiting. It's been great interest. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Okay, Matt's made a couple of comments that you might like to look at. Okay, do you want to carry on, Ollie, towards the Hinton Way roundabout?
Yeah. So continuing further south, again, this was following feedback from the previous stakeholder consultation event in relation to the Linton Greenway as it crosses the Hinton Way roundabout. So the main changes here stem from just south of the existing Park and Ride junction, where we're looking to take some of the wide carriageway space and realign the existing bus stop shelter, which has a benefit of two key benefits. A, it gives more space for the shared footway cycleway, as well as giving space for the bus stop itself without taking up space for waiting passengers from the path itself. And then continuing that curb line around to take a better space to improve the segregation of the pathway from vehicles round, circulating the roundabout itself. So a lot more better segregation through that section. And it also allows an intervention at the main Cherry Hinton exit and entrance on the approach to the roundabout, to give a lot shorter crossing distance in that location and better visibility in terms of the alignment of how cycles and people use that crossing on the approach to that location on both arms. So one step the curb line widens out on this side, and then on the other side we're looking to widen on the main central reservation. But the aim is to again reduce that crossing distance down as much as we can to improve that crossing distance. And then the roundabout continues, and some minor curb adjustments within the there's an existing hatch line through there, but at the moment that corner's quite tight with some street furniture in the way that constrains that. So we're looking to adjust the curb line round there to again provide a slightly better path alignment round, better visibility round before tying that back into the existing curb line through just past the roundabout exit. So again, this is a new development from what was last presented at the LLF session.
Okay, well, I think we'll stop there. We've got Matt who wants to say something.
Thanks again. Okay, yeah, thanks for looking at this. This is, of course, starting to look much better. I guess the questions I have are, one, is there any possibility of, I realize this is probably too much, maybe it's a bit too expensive, but I don't know. I better ask, moving the curb line such that the entrances and exits are more radial rather than tangential as they currently are. I can explain that further if necessary, because the tangential exits lead to higher speeds. Of course, narrowing the crossing is, of course, much appreciated. That's question one. Number two is, are you able to address the blind corner at the corner where it says existing lighting post as the west part of the, yeah, I think we mentioned that explicitly last time. And then what's the visibility like for people trying to cross the entry arm of Cherry Hinton Road? So further to the east, yeah.
On that.
So if you're, yeah, can you see the drivers coming along there? Basically, I think that there might be some other issues like that, but that's, is the green there also that you're showing, is that indicative or is that intended to be verge?
It's intended to be verge as a clear separation through that that section.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for now. So yeah, can you go ahead?
So in terms of this corner, yeah. So the intention here is to give a lot better radius on that approach line, and how exactly we do that, we might be able to pinch a bit more space on this curb line, which will help with your comment about in terms of the radial, rather than having that straight sort of jet stream exit from the roundabout. So this line is sort of fairly indicative at this stage. The subject of a bit further development, but some more easing around here should be feasible to improve that crossing, that corner location as well, which will also go to help to address the exit element.
Actually, one thing I'll come back on. You're showing dashed lines for the crossings. Is that because they're signalized?
No, that was just trying to reflect the existing sort of elephant footprints that are currently there. That won't be a signalised crossing. That will remain a giveaway.
Okay. And the visibility for people, active travelers coming coming northbound.
Yeah.
So we expect to do some trimming around that to make sure there's better visibility on that approach, and we may even look to adjust that pathway around on that section as well.
All right, thanks very much.
Okay, David Planks asked a question about sometimes paths are referred to as active travel paths and sometimes as dual use paths.
So the intention is that the Linton Greenway is an active travel path, and I believe that's the current sort of consistent terminology. And as apologies if astray to refer to it as something else.
Okay, Linda Worth, please.
Yeah, inconsistencies. What's what I'm going to ask about. So, are you saying that this is a proper NMU available to all three active travellers? Because all I can see on here is references to cycle paths and pedestrians and so on.
So that's the intention through this section, yes, to be an NMU route.
Right.
As the link up.
Okay, thank you.
Totally frozen.
Nope. Are there any
Yeah,
other
sorry,
questions?
my computer froze just for about 10-15 seconds. So I'm back on. I haven't got any other questions at the minute. So do you want to move on? Is it the pinch points?
Yep.
Near Copley Hill Farm?
Yes, yeah. So the majority of the length we're achieving a 2.5 metre wide path with segregation of 1.5 metres from the 1307 up until the Copley Farms estate. Up just south of that is where we have a particular pinch point, which you can see here, the blue dash line representative of the existing highway boundary along this section and the existing path width. From a current, we're looking at seeing what we can do with it within the road markings element to try and align traffic further away from the path at this location to give a better segregation, albeit that it would need to be at this stage just in road marking. We haven't completely discounted the potential to widen at this section, but at this stage, we think, given budget constraints and along the length of which we're looking at, which is about 700 metres worth, the alternative would require some reasonable widening of the 1307 along this section. So we're trying to introduce just some measures that will give a bit more separation rather than traffic following closer to the channel line from the path in this location. And that will be essentially between the Copley Hill Business Park up until where the space starts widening out again just before the approach to Bagram Research Campus roundabout, which is just off screen here. So this is possibly the most sort of underwhelming in relation to the improvement measures tabled so far on this section.
Okay, but I've got Miranda. Would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wondered whether you'd explored at all taking that section from the edge of Wandlebury over to the Babraham Research Campus little mini roundabout around the back of the whole of that lot. Was that, did you even sort of approach the landowners or anything, or look at it on a map? Because that would be surely so much nicer than trying to squeeze into that tiny bit of pavement.
It's not something that's been specifically looked at as far as I'm aware from the Linton Greenway as a route option selection. Certainly not within the last year or two.
I'm sure we've mentioned it in at least one of the meetings we've had, but we've had so many meetings, I couldn't tell you which one.
No, not as far as I'm aware, no.
Right. Is it something the GCP might ever look at, given the huge constraints you've got on that section of the active travel path?
That's possibly one for you, Martin, in relation to that.
Well, I suppose at this point it hasn't been looked at, and our vision was to build and get the pathway up to the best standards we could, given the constraints we had. Getting land from landowners isn't that easy sometimes, but I certainly, in my time since January, it hasn't been explored now. So whether we could consider it in the future, yeah, perhaps. It really just depends on budget and whether we would believe it's possible to get land from landowners, and whether on what lengths we would wish to go to do so. So I'll keep it on the back burner, but it's not something I would consider we would do for this particular section that we have as part of the proposal to at least enhance what we have and working within the highway boundary.
Well, yeah, okay. But the fundamental problem is there just isn't room in that highway boundary, is there?
No, it's a challenge, but we're trying to look at the solution to keep within that highway boundary for the reasons I've said. As I said, we've never approached any of the landowners, to my knowledge, or certainly not in my time. We can sort of tentatively explore those type of things, but it's just stuff like that does tend to make any improvements you might want to make kick them further down the road, because my experience so far with land take across the CSET schemes is that it's quite challenging, and not everyone wants to hand over their land without a bit of a fight.
Linda wants to come in now, I think.
Yeah, I have to actually echo everything that's been said here, because the reality is, if there's a section of a path, no matter how beautiful the rest of it is, if a certain section of it is perceived as being unsafe, and that's particularly for cyclists as well as other users, then it ruins the whole route. It absolutely makes a nonsense of the whole thing, because you're spending a whole load of money on something that isn't going to be used. This really does need to be addressed, and I have to correct you, Martin. Negotiations with landowners have taken place in the past, and they really do need to be revisited.
Yeah, I think to be fair to Martin, he did say in his time, and Martin did only take over in January this year, but
Yeah.
you are quite right, Linda.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you have the benefit of the history, Linda, that I don't have, but look, it's all a learning point, and I take on board your comments, and I won't ignore them. No. I'm just making the points I made relative to what we were trying to do something rather than not do anything. And I guess if the perception of everyone is that there's no point in doing anything here, that no one's going to use it anyway, then we might need to revisit our thinking.
Well, I am aware that there are local cyclists that choose to go a heck of a long way round just to avoid that section, which is an absolute nonsense.
Yeah. No, I take your point. I can't argue with what you said in terms of its the standards, and obviously the LTN 120 standards are better than we can achieve here, given the footprint of the highway land we have. So I'll take your point.
Linda Duchenu?
Sorry, I just wanted to bring in an idea I've been thinking about recently, which is to reconceptualize this area as a country park, and so that any design that impinges on it is thought about in terms of how it contributes to the development of a country park. We found during the lockdown that these fields, the fields opposite at the end of Babraham Road on either side, have been used extensively by people walking, but they were previously used, but even more people are using them for walking. We have the beechwood on the top of the hill behind the golf course. We have the two Wandlebury sites. We've got the 9 wells, and I just think that at the moment the whole area is being thought about as an approach to Cambridge and to the science, site, rather than developing it as a country park for the use of people particularly in South Cambridge. For example, the park and ride could be designed more for people coming in at the weekend to use the I see somebody's already had this idea. Linda, have a look at WD. Thank you. So I just wanted to throw that in, but perhaps you've already all been discussing it.
Well, James Littlewood has provided a response and a contact, hasn't he, Linda?
Yeah.
Thanks to James.
Thank you. Did he?
Okay, Ollie. Do we want to come back to the Goggs Farm junction now, please?
So, scheme 4 and 18, the Haver Hill Junction Road realignment and Wandlebury elements. So, I think the first thing to probably state is, in terms of the sort of the design principles of this scheme, they remain as previously presented. And in terms of sort of development of this scheme, that not too much has been developed from when we last spoke in January. In relation to these sites, whilst ongoing discussions are held in relation to land acquisition for the scheme. For those of you who are local and travel the route regularly, you may have noticed there's been some recent carriageway repair patching done as part of we managed to get in as part of some routine maintenance plans, so that's assisted. But fundamentally, in terms of the design and the implementation, this scheme hasn't evolved from when we last spoke about it. So the next steps really for this scheme in terms of next way forward is to conclude the land discussions in relation required for the scheme, prepare the planning application for submission later this year, with a view to be on site during the summer of 2022. So the next couple of slides are the same as what you'll have seen for those who attended the last LLF session, but as a brief overview, the principle of the scheme is to provide an improved crossing point at Haver Hill Road, realign the Haver Hill Road to address an existing accident cluster site at the Haver Hill Road and farm shop entrance. Looking at restricting turning movements at that junction, again to improve the safety of that junction, as well as a result improving the crossing facilities for NMU users across the 1307 and also the side road at that location as well. As a result of that, there's also some adjustments to the layout at the Wandlebury junction, improvements to the intervisibility at the Wandlebury site junction itself by bringing the path away from and the giveaway line away from the existing wall to improve visibility between the two users at that location, as well as providing a new right turn facility within the central reserve at that location to allow traffic to U-turn, that no longer turn right out of the side road down at Haverhill Road. The right turn into Wandlebury at present is also proposed to be relocated to the existing facility further up, just the other side of the hill, with the aim of then for simplifying that junction and making that more simple and easy to use for all drivers and NMU users of that crossing location. And in the background, the main Linton Greenway continues to follow through here and links up in these two key strategic positions in this location. And this slide essentially shows the current proposals in closer detail, both at the Haverhill Road junction. So this is the blue here is the realigned Haverhill Road alignment, and new active travel path linking up to the Maygold Trust car park, crossing over to the side road to the farm shop on the opposite side, with an extension of the existing central island coming down on the 1307. And then a slightly closer look at the arrangement at the Wandlebury, as well as improved path access for the existing bus stops at the top of the hill of Wandlebury, and the right turn facility at that location, and the new right turn facility coming round opposite the existing Wandlebury entrance exit. And then south of that location, the carriageways kept down to one lane in each direction. So instead of having 2 lanes widening out after the Wandlebury junction, it remains as 1 lane, and speed limit reduced down to 50 miles an hour in both directions, running through. So essentially, as you're driving from Haverhill Road to the A11, you'll only ever have 1 lane of carriageway to travel on, and the same in the other direction, coming from the A11 towards Cambridge, you'll only ever have 1 lane to travel on, and both at 50 miles an hour for that section.
Okay. Right. David asked a question. Is the land acquisition holding up schemes for an 18?
Sorry, Martin.
Yeah. I suppose that it's a situation where, in order to have confidence of the build, we at least need to agree heads of terms with the landowners. That process is going quite well, but it's not concluded, and I just feel it's prudent to have the heads of terms in place, and then to apply for planning rather than do it in advance of that happening.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I've got 3 speakers, Miranda Fife, then Barbara, and then James Littlewood. So Miranda, please.
Hi again. I was curious about the land purchase as well, actually, but just really out of nosiness, which landowners is it you're negotiating with? Is it just the arable field on the corner? But you've referred to landowners plural. Who else do you need to buy land off?
We need to buy land from well, Gonville and Keys, really. That's they're on the north side, which is the farm entrance effectively, and the associated holding there. So the other landowner is not the college. No.
But a more important question arose while I was watching Ollie's thing. If you could squidge back to the bit with the Wandlebury entrance. Obviously, as a horse rider, I'm delighted that you've put us in this, what you're calling equestrian only route, but I think you've not taken account of the fact, and I don't know if anyone else from the Maygold Trust is on the call because I can't see the list of attendees, but between that bus stop and the bit dead opposite Wandlebury is also the pedestrian route for people using the bus and wanting to get into Maygold Down. There's a pedestrian entrance to Maygold Down dead opposite Wandlebury. And we would very much like that to be an obvious route. I say we from the point of view of Maygold Down now, for people from the bus stop, rather than climbing over the fence, which they're busy destroying. it needs to be an obvious route for pedestrians. So it's not just crossing the road to go to Wandlebury and back again, but actually also getting off the bus and going using that pedestrian route from Magog Down. So if you could take that into account and make sure that's, without banning the horse riders from it, obviously.
Proposed pedestrian only route.
All, well, equestrians, it'd be nice to keep the cyclists off it, obviously. No offence, Matt, but yeah, we need to be able to get bus users and people who occasionally park in that lay-by between there and the pedestrian entrance for Magog Down.
Okay, noted. We can take a look at that.
Thanks.
Okay, so Barbara's next.
Okay, whilst I welcome all the alterations here at this junction, as it is such a dangerous junction, you have mentioned it will be 50 miles an hour. Are you convinced that is low enough at what is already a really dangerous junction? We've been asking for many, many years for speed limits to be on that bit of road and on the Haverhill Road, and we just get knocked back by highways every single time that it's not necessary to lower it. I think 50 miles an hour is still major speed for what will become a new junction that people will need to get used to. It's on the top brow of the hill, coming down the hill. It's a dangerous junction, and I just wondered if there was any way you could lower that speed limit even more.
We did have discussions with CCC and the police in relation to this, as to whether we'd get their support in to a lower speed limit in this location, and without fundamentally it comes down to the character of the road, and the 1307 fundamentally, particularly on this section, has its roots in a 70 mile an hour design standard. So whilst we're making some measures that have won the police over to support the reduction down to 50, they weren't willing to support the lower restriction. And in discussions with CCC, where they've gone against the police recommendations, they're now finding issues with being able to enforce, because the police won't enforce because they won't come out to a speed limit that they advised against implementing in the first place. So I feel that at this stage, with the change down from the 2-lane to 1-lane, and the consistent message as a driver you read coming off the A11, as you turn off the A11, your 50 miles an hour is set there until you start to hit the Hinton Way, where it drops down to 40. That should introduce a step change in relation to driver behaviour from that point.
So you've not got the intermediary faster bits between.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's just one common speed limit all the way along.
That's correct, yeah.
Sounds much better, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. James Littlewood, please.
Ollie, hi, thanks for introducing those. Several sort of minor things really, not in any particular order. The first is the lay-by, which is south of Wandlebury, and we talked before about whether that could be closed. That still appears on there. Is that because you've been told you can't close it, or?
No, it still appears at the moment. We have undertaken some surveys recently to understand usage. Obviously, with the slight caveat of the COVID environment we're all living in at the moment, but at least to get a picture of how that's being used and frequency, in order to inform a discussion with CCC highways as to whether that lay-by could be closed or not. So that's still a potential on the cards. It's shown there for now as the current proposal, but that's not to say it may not be able to be closed as part of this scheme.
Okay, thanks. So it basically was used as a car park during COVID, and similarly the lay-by, which is on the other side of the road near the bus stop for the Magog Down. There's again, people have been using that as a car park, and I don't know whether there's any issue there about removing that and just keeping that so it's just used as a bus stop.
Just on this side
on the
just at that location.
Yeah,
We'll only look to provide what we need to in relation to the bus stop in this location, because it also helps us in relation to that path link and the equestrian link. So we'll provide what we need to for the bus stop for that.
Okay, thanks. And then secondly, the island outside the sort of GOG shop, which has kind of got a grey shading on it at the moment. Could that be green, or is the intention that that could be green rather than grey? I mean, obviously the crossing itself has to be surfaced, but the actual island.
We'll make it as green as we can, visibility display permitting. So we'll want to where we're concerned about long-term plant growth obstructing visibility. We'll certainly want to keep it basically a porous asphalt, so one that allows the rainwater to soak through, but obviously you don't have a maintenance concern about visibility. But outside of visibility displays, there's certainly the potential, I imagine, on these the bits closer to the existing island. Certainly we should be able to do something to green those.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, the habitat here is chalk grassland, and actually, you'll get some chalk arisings from the excavation works. You could put those down, and what you'll then get is those colonized by rare chalk plants, which won't grow high, so you won't have any visibility display issues, and you'll create a bit of decent habitat. The next point is just about the removal, obviously, the dual carriageway bit. Is there any plans to do anything with the sort of spare lane, as it were, at that point, in order to green it over, or is it just the intention to leave it as it is and put some hash it out effectively?
A bit of both. On the side where we've got the path, the proposal is essentially to keep a green space in that section, so we gain an extra verge distance. There's a little bit of hatching to allow for potential of broken down car, or at least a bit more space than the standard running lane, but don't want to widen it out too much to create a sort of an informal overtaking opportunity. On this side at the moment, we'd proposed as hatching just on the inbound side, so that the verge happens where we've got the main active travel path running alongside it.
Okay, thanks. And one thing that we did raise at a previous conversation was just vehicles turning left out of Wandlebury and going towards the A11. And just the issue at the moment is that obviously vehicles coming over the brow of the hill and going down there, even if there's a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, they not necessarily stick to that. And obviously, if you've got a vehicle coming from pretty much a standing start outside of Wandlebury at the moment, it's fine because there's a dual carriageway and the vehicles just overtake them in the outside lane. But if it's reduced to one lane, you're going to have a vehicle pulling out at going 0.5 miles an hour and a vehicle coming over the brow of the hill potentially doing 60. So what we had asked is whether actually the inside lane, as it were, could be hatched out in that location to allow vehicles to pick up some speed before pulling out into the carriageway. That would make it a lot safer.
I think our concern with that at the time was what that would implicate in relation to the benefits that we're getting for the main path crossing by bringing it away, and also how that relates to the improved crossing point at this location. We did say we'd have a look at that as a sketch, so we will still have a look to see if there's any improvement we could do around that. But I think as a principle, we'd probably still look to keep something akin to what we've got to get the benefits from the interface and the visibility at that location.
Yeah, okay. I'm just concerned about the sort of safety issues there. And then finally, I'm not necessarily expecting you to answer this one, but in relation to the sort of off-road scheme, we've obviously got a change in mayor who is sort of knocking the cam on the head. And one of the reasons that the idea to do an inline inbound only bus lane as an alternative was dropped because it wasn't cam compliant. And I'm just wondering whether the GCP is going to have to do a back check if that's the case on that original decision, and whether if that option then comes back to be looked at, whether this scheme then prevents that from happening.
Thank you for caveating that in terms of a response at this stage. That's possibly something maybe Martin to to take away and discuss internally, but I know this scheme has a lot of its support internally within GCP at the moment, I think.
Yeah. Look, I don't know the political persuasions and the changes that might be brought to bear, James. So obviously it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment. Obviously, I'm very passionate about this particular scheme because this is a dangerous location. And so the changes that Ollie has put forward here, holistically, I think will make a big difference. But there's always compromises when you're retrofitting something, isn't there?
Yeah, okay.
I think there may be some clarity with regard to the off-road proposal, phase 2, because there's I understand a major report going to the Joint Assembly on the 10th of June about phase 2, and subsequently will go on to the Executive Board. So I think it's have a look at those agenda papers and see what they say about phase 2.
Okay, thanks. And then just one final question, which is just about the phasing of this particular scheme if it goes ahead. I know you've got a construction in sort of summer, autumn 2022, but from obviously doing this work will have an impact on access to the country park and our residents that live there. And I'm particularly from the country park point of view, obviously summer is usually a very busy time for us with the school holidays. So if you're able to schedule something that starts in September onwards, that would be beneficial from our perspective.
Yeah, James, thank you for that. We'll certainly take that on board because or we can coordinate and collaborate with local businesses, etc. Then we should take that on board.
Right, Miranda Pfeiffer's got asked to speak again, but before she does, David asked, why do CCC and the police not support a speed limit lower than 50 miles an hour? And could we have a response to that, please?
It comes back to whether they feel there's a significant environment change to warrant the changes proposed, and here they didn't feel like there was fundamentally the alignment and the nature of the road wasn't going to be enough to be, without a sort of a further realignment of the road, wasn't going to be enough to encourage further natural speed reduction by vehicles. So all you end up with is vehicles naturally going at a higher speed limit, which will therefore exceed the speed limit, which then means they won't be able to enforce it.
Okay, right. So Miranda, please.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to James Littlewood's point, his request, I suppose it was, to remove those lay-bys. I don't see that there's any justification for that. And I want to make the point that both Magog Down and Wandlebury Country Park have public footpaths across them, which are, of course, open 24/7, whereas the car parks aren't, certainly not the car park at Magog Down. And the Magog Trust, we often get requests from people wanting to access the site at night to go stargazing because it's such a fabulous view from there, of course. And I always direct them to park in those lay-bys because that is safe off-road parking, throughout the night when the car parks aren't open. So to remove that safe parking, I think would be very dangerous. And I don't see why James I do see why James wants to remove it. I assume he wants more parking fees, but I think it would be pretty churlish to remove those lay-bys. It's an expense that the county council shouldn't be even considering.
I think in relation to the lay-bys, firstly, the one that's on screen at the moment, you'll see that actually when you factor in the swept path of a bus pulling in and stopping at that and pulling out, there doesn't, and the improvements to the pedestrian, it doesn't actually leave much of a lay-by space in that location.
I've seen up 5 or 6 cars parked there, Ollie, when we were really busy during COVID.
Including a bus stop?
Yeah, still allowing space for the bus, yeah.
Okay, on the other side of the road, it essentially allows us to give more separation to the path if we can remove that lay-by. It is a bit of a pinch point by trying to keep that lay-by. So from a path perspective, it's a lot cleaner if that lay-by isn't maintained, but hence why we commissioned the survey to try and get some more information about usage and frequency and things like that to help inform the discussions with CCC.
And I think James would like to come back as well.
Just to say, Miranda, that the issue is a bit around antisocial behaviour. We have a lot of littering there and fly tipping, and people maybe going in the bushes to do stuff that they shouldn't.
Okay, well, we've heard both sides of the story. I haven't got any more speakers, so if you'd like to just press on to the last section, I believe, Ollie, which is fairly short.
Yes. So just to touch on a couple of other schemes that are sort of formerly west of the A11, just to remind in terms of the next section of the Linton Greenway, the A11 crossing, that remains down to be delivered as part of the phase 2 proposals to ensure an integrated approach with that alignment of the route with the travel hub site proposals. And in relation to Scheme 7, which was the improvements at Babraham High Street, we've had some feedback in relation to some illegal U-turns that are occurring at the High Street, and we're currently looking at some curb line alterations at that location to address that, which will be done as part of a package of works once we've already got a contractor commission to do some of the packages we've talked about already this evening.
Okay, well, I think that's the last slide of the evening, isn't it?
It is.
So if there are any final comments or questions from anyone before we close the meeting? I've had a comment from Ros Aveling that's come round to everybody, and Linda wants to say something.
Yeah, thanks. Ollie, can you please just confirm that this route that you're proposing to now to be an NMU, that have you cleared that with the road safety audit team?
So that the measures for the Haverhill Road junction, that has already gone through a stage 1. There's still a stage 2 road safety audit to go through, but the stage 1 has been cleared, yes.
And what about the new path that you're proposing, or the new part of the scheme up from the park and ride and so on? Has that route, the entire route, been cleared?
So that will follow with the adjustments. So one of the elements about the stakeholder measures at the Hinton Way and the crossing, this was one of the sort of pinch points around this section in terms of getting clearances. So this scheme will still need to go through a safety audit. So as part of that will get the second stage clearance, hopefully, at that stage.
So effectively, if that can't be met, then this is not going to happen.
Not necessarily, no. We just need to see what comments come back as part of that process, but and make the case essentially for including it as part of that process.
Okay, can you keep us in the loop on that one, please?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I mentioned a minute or so ago about a comment from Ros Aveling, but apparently other attendees haven't seen that. So could I just ask Ros to make a comment or ask a question, please?
Hello?
Hello, yes.
No, it was only an additional comment about the safety aspect of that lay-by adjacent to Wandlebury, in that when it's exceeded its capacity for sort of permanent parking rather than lay-by parking, people have been parking all the way down the verge at pinch points and half onto the carriageway, half onto the pavement. So it's really a safety issue as much as anything.
Thank you very much. And any further questions or comments from anybody? Well, I haven't got any more, so thank you very much to everybody for attending. Thank you to Ollie and Martin for their work, from Michaela and to Alistair. And Thank you very much. And I declare the meeting closed, and tomorrow we shall be on the other side of Fort Wentworth.